back, everyone, to the Late Night Review. And tonight I'm talking about a movie I grew up watching. I saw it reran on television. We had the video cassette that we rented from the video store, and we would watch it over and over again. It's been one of my favorite movies for many years since I was a kid. It came out in 1973. I'm talking about Walking Tall with Joe Don Baker. This movie came out about 4 years before I was born. I was born in 77. The movie came out in 1973. I would watch it over and over again. I recorded it when it came on TV, and then I would rewatch it over and over again. It's a movie that I've always liked. It's a drama. It's sad. It's got a lot of action. If you're an action fan and a drama fan, you will like this movie. This movie has a ton of action. It's got a pretty fast pace, very realistic. It's disturbing. It's heartbreaking. It's sad. It's got heroics in it. It's a story about the legend and the real life hero, Buford Pusser, who was the sheriff. He was the sheriff of the McNary Police Department in Tennessee. And he had just an absolute legacy of heroics. He was a real life hero. He was a real life tough guy. He was a professional wrestler, and I believe he wrestled in the Mid-South for a little while, known as Buford the Bull. That was his wrestling name. And he joined the Marines actually after he graduated from high school, but he was discharged because he had chronic asthma. So he was kind of discouraged, moved back to Tennessee, back to his hometown, and I think from there he pursued professional wrestling. His biography and his story, his life story, and there's documentaries online. I suggest you check those out. When you go to Google, you can Google his story, Buford Pusser biography. There's a ton of information there. Documentaries on YouTube that I'm sure you would enjoy and find absolutely fascinating. This is a very fascinating guy. A lot of people have seen this movie, and yes, I'm going to give the movie away. This is a spoiler review, so yes, I will be revealing what happens in the movie. And his life story was absolutely fascinating. Very, very strong guy. He's 6'6" as a wrestler. He was known as Buford the Bull, which I already mentioned, but he was really, really tough. And he became the sheriff of the McNary Police Department in Tennessee. And he went after the organized crime syndicate down there. They had a local mafia down there. He went after a lot of illegal activity and a lot of criminals, a lot of people who were involved in corruption. And he paid the price. You know, they shot him. He was shot on multiple occasions. I think it might have been 8 times. Like I said, his biography is available online. It's more than worth checking out. I mean, his story should always be remembered. His story is very fascinating, and I've seen a couple documentaries about him on YouTube, and they're available. I would strongly suggest checking them out. Fascinating. He was attacked by these criminals that he was going after, the mafia, local mafia, Dixie Mafia, I believe it was called, and other people who did different things, who were involved in multiple illegal activities. They shot him, they attacked him. His wife was brutally killed. His jaw was crushed because I think he got shot in the jaw, and he eventually had reconstructive surgery. He recovered to a great degree, and he went after him with a vengeance. The sequence and chronology of the events, the exact sequence and chronological order, you can find that in multiple biographies about him online. And it's just amazing. It's a true story. He went after a lot of these bad guys, put them in prison, killed some of them, put some of them in prison, depending on the circumstance. It's a real life heroic story filled with tragedy, drama, heroics, sadness, heartbreak, endurance, strength. Very, very fascinating. And the movie does it justice. This is a great movie. Walking Tall really brings the character to life and his story to life. And Joe Don Baker playing that role of Buford Pusser. And by the way, he got to know Buford Pusser in real life, became friends with him and his family. His wife, like I mentioned, Buford Pusser, his wife was brutally murdered, and he goes out for vengeance and seeks true justice. And the chronology of the events and the sequence of what happened, like I said, is available on those biographies online. And this movie really is an action filled movie. It's a movie that I think if you really like action and drama, it's got a lot of disturbing scenes in here. It's not a joyride of action. It's a very disturbing movie, but he goes out and he goes after the bad guys. And if you're an action fan and a drama fan, I think you'll like this. It's well done. It's well directed. It's well put together. Joe Don, they made three movies, and then later The Rock did a remake of Walking Tall. And Kevin Sorbo, who played Hercules in the Legendary Journeys, he has some Walking Tall movies out there. And the first Walking Tall, in my opinion, is better than them all. Part two was with Bo Svensson, and part three was with Bo Svensson. He's another actor that I always liked. He had multiple roles in different movies. You would probably, if you've seen him, you probably recognize him from other films too. He did a good job in part two and part three. The Rock did a good job in the remake, but the first one with Joe Don Baker, in my opinion, is so good. None of the other ones really compare with this one. It's the most realistic, I believe. It's the most dramatic, and it's the beginning story. Part two, maybe I'll do a ranking one day of the Walking Tall films that I had seen. Part two is okay. In my honest opinion, part two is okay. Part three is good. Part three is really good. And the remake with The Rock is really good too. Maybe I'll do a ranking one day, but part one I believe is the best. Just off the cuff, I'm thinking part one is definitely the best. None of them really compare to the first one. Part two's okay. Part three is good, and I think I actually like that second to the first one. And then the remake with The Rock, is a good one too. But I think if I were to rank it real quick, I think part one would be the best. And then part three would be second. And it's close, but the remake with The Rock would probably be, yeah, I think part three would be second. Just edging out the remake with The Rock. I think part three would be second. Part two would be third. I believe part two would actually be four. Part two would rank number four. So you'd have one would be the best one, and then the second to that would be three. Third best would be The Rock's remake, and then the fourth would be part two. Just off the cuff, off the top of my head, I haven't put a ranking together yet. Maybe in the future I'll rank these Walking Tall movies. The ones that I'd seen, I think there's a few I haven't seen. But yeah, this is really a great movie. It's a movie that really, it's disturbing and it's sad. Some of the movies that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, they're disturbing movies, and the characters are not really, sometimes the characters aren't very likable. But in here, you care about Buford Pusser, you like his character, you like his family, you like the characters and the people that become his friends later, and maybe one or two characters that you weren't sure were going to be his friends turn out to be his friends. And to me, it's a very well put together movie. It's not only well done and well acted, but the pace is good, really a good pace. It's very realistic, and it was made in 1973. And some of those older movies are more realistic than some of the disturbing modern movies, some of them. Like when you think, and you go across genres too, you have this one, Walking Tall, but then you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre that I think came out the same year as this. I think Chainsaw Part 1 was in 73. This was in 73. And I believe Death Wish Part 1 with Charles Bronson was in 74, 73 or 4. Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, directed by Martin Scorsese. came out, forgot what year it was, the 70s or early 80s, but some of those older movies are pretty realistic. Look at the first Exorcist, you know, whether you believe in demon possession or not, that was pretty realistic. There's a lot of older movies that have a disturbing, realistic atmosphere, and then the way they're done, and really they are. This one here is one of the most realistic movies. Some of the fighting in certain movies that I'm sure you've seen and I've seen are fake, but the fighting in here is it's really realistic. It's fast paced. No movie's perfect. I mean, you're not going to there's not really a movie where the fighting is just perfect like real life, but this comes pretty close. The fighting in here, it's a pretty bloody movie. It's a movie that has a lot of action, and it's about justice seeking, and he's trying to do the right thing, trying to clean up corruption. I would suggest looking into the real story behind this movie, what inspired this. This movie doesn't give you I don't think, a perfect chronological order in the sequence of events that took place in real life. I don't think it's exactly like real life. It's just inspired by the real life story. So I think it's good to look at the real life story, the real biography of Buford Pusser. It's just so fascinating. I know I've said that over and over again, but his story should be remembered. He was a real life hero. This movie is awesome. If you can't tell, it's one of my all-time favorites. And I know I keep repeating myself. I can't recommend it high enough. I think it's really, really a good movie, and I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to enjoy it if you're an action fan, drama fan, and I hope you check it out. It's a great movie. This has been the Late Night Review. Please share this video, like and subscribe, and have a good night, everybody.